Yeah, that was just in the nick of time.
All right, you ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hello, DCO Nation. Welcome back to another DCO Live. Welcome to another Thursday chat. Vite Fishing, Russell, Joe, great to see you guys in. As you guys can see on the screen, I have a very special guest. You guys actually know him because he joins almost every week. I can't say every week, but every week Steve is on here, and Steve knows his fishing. So he is actually a guide with Red Hound Guide Service. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure I got it right. So Steve is local right down here. I think he fishes a lot of Georgetown. I see him in Merle's Inlet all the time. Steve, I think we've known of each other for what, a couple of years now, something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Something like
Okay, yeah. We actually met at the landing one day. I'll never forget this. This was probably 2 years ago. Steve makes his own lures, and he gave me this little, probably 3-inch curly tail, and it was in like a shrimp color. And he gave me a couple of them, and I was like, "Hey, man, I appreciate it." I said, "What's the name of this?" And he was like, I don't know, man. It's just, I don't know, shrimp color." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I took him down the next weekend to the Wando River, and I said, "I'll never forget this." I tied it on, I put on an eighth of an ounce jig head, and I fished around a dock. And in 4 casts, I picked up 4 trout. I mean, I just let this thing just kind of sink down, and bang, picked up a trout, picked up a trout, picked up a trout. And then that's when I was, filming the video, and I was like, well, I don't know what to call this thing. So I called it Shrimpy Steve. So that's what it was. But anyway, Steve, welcome. I really appreciate you jumping on tonight. Why don't you just give us a little rundown of kind of your fishing resume and kind of how, you got into this?
that. No, thanks for having me, Chris. Yeah. Well, I grew up fishing here in the Low Country. I live in Georgetown. Grew up in Pawleys Island. Uh, I've fished ever since I can remember. Some of my earliest memories of my life were fishing. Um, like I said, I grew up fishing in Georgetown. I was a really avid bass angler until I got in late years of high school. Then I started fishing inshore for redfish, flounder, trout, stripers. At about about age 35, I moved up to the mountains. I had a really bad affliction with trout fishing up there, and within 2 years of starting to do that, fish for trout, I was fly fishing at the time. I was living up there, and then within about 9 months after that, I was guiding up there. 20 years later, a little over 20 years later, I moved back. Had to deal with some family issues. My parents were getting on in age, and I came home and took care of them. And during that process, I started kayak fishing, and I fell head over heels in love with that. It's a whole different ball game inshore from a kayak than fishing from a bigger boat.
Hmm.
Really big difference. I mean, when I left here, 25 plus years ago, I fished mainly inshore for reds, flounder, trout with bait,
Hmm.
but I had started fly fishing for them at the time, so that was about 92, 93 when I started fly fishing. Uh, rest they say is history. I mean, I've caught so many fish out of a kayak, and it's really fun. You can get places in a kayak you can't get unless you're a wading bird.
Right,
You
right.
you can't you cannot chase fish any other way than you can in a kayak.
And that's what I think I love about kayak fishing is the places that I go, or kayakers go. I don't see a boat. I'll pass them on the way, to the place that I'm going, but I don't see boats back in there. So yeah, you're looking at fish that, you know, there's not a lot of pressure in some of those areas that you can get back to.
Yeah, especially the redfish.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
without a
on
doubt.
those, you know, the tide's falling out. You have to fish quick. You have to catch the fish and then get out of there. You're gonna be stuck a little while, like I was last
Yeah,
Saturday.
yeah, yeah. We had a nice little chat about him being stuck on on a sandbar for a few hours. But
Yeah.
the good thing about it is the tide always comes back in. So, but hey, the reason why I brought you on, Steve, is I really wanted to talk winter fishing. Ooh, it looks like Steve froze. Steve, you got me? He froze up, but he'll probably come back on. But guys, um, throw your questions in the chat box. We'll get them to Steve as soon as he unfreezes here. But we're going to be talking some winter fishing and what it takes to, you know, stay on these fish as the winter starts to set in, as the colder temperatures roll in, as the water temperatures kind of drop. So, you know, that's what, you know, we really want to talk about. And as soon as Steve pops back up, ooh, I lost Steve. So, guys, maybe he'll call back in. He was having a little bit of problems, but no problem. We're going to keep carrying on. When he calls back in, I'll pop him back up. But one of the things that I was, ooh, there he is. He is back on already. Hey, you're back on. Great. All right. So, Steve, so let's talk some winter fishing tonight. So, when these water temperatures start to drop, how does that affect your plan when you go out that day of fishing?
Well, it really depends on what I'm trying to catch. If I'm trying to catch trout, I'll concentrate on deeper water right off the drop offs. If I'm targeting redfish, I'll target mud flats, 4 feet of water or less. You know, with direct sunlight exposure, and because it warms up the mud, and the redfish like that a lot better than the trout. The trout will hang. You know, you come off your shore, off your bank, and your oyster beds are usually there, and it'll kind of gradually drop off, and then right when it drops off in the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 feet of water, that's where your trout are going to be holding.
Now they're going to hold midway through the water column. They're not going to be on the bottom or the top. They're going to be in that mid
They
water.
they will be in the mid water column, but they'll be suspended pretty much right over that drop off,
Okay.
hang right on that drop off, and they do not like a lure that sinks fast. So like it use as little weight as you can possibly use to stay, you know, close to the bottom, but you want to concentrate on that drop off. So primarily you want to back off the shore a little bit, because most times if you fish where you normally would, you're sitting on top of the fish.
So in a large creek channel, you're better off to be in the middle of the channel shooting towards the grass line and almost
Right,
working it down the drop
right,
off.
right. Stay 40 feet off the bank or so,
Okay. Okay.
and you'll right usually about halfway back to you, about 20, 25 feet off the bank is where that main part of that drop off is going to be, and that's where your trout's going to be controlled.
Okay. Russell Decker just dropped in a question. He says, do you downsize your bait or just slow down the presentation?
I definitely slow down the presentation. The bait size differs because, I mean, sometimes they're really hungry and they want a big bait, and sometimes they want a smaller bait. So I'll usually stick between 3 to 5.5, 6 inches.
Okay. Okay. Are you doing paddle tails? You doing shrimp imitations? Does it not matter?
Well, after the water temperature, usually after water temperature gets in the 40s, one time I switch from shrimp to paddle tails or jerk baits. You know, a fluke-ish bait, just some kind of a jerk bait, and just slow it down, twitch it, pause, let it sink. And a lot of times you can let it sink to the bottom, they'll come pick it up off the bottom.
Okay.
That goes for redfish as well.
Yeah, that was one of the things. I'm glad that you said that. One of the things, especially about the bait is 2 weeks ago, I was still seeing almost like little 1 or 2 inch shrimp dumping out of the marshes. When I went last weekend, I didn't see those. Now, whether they're still there or not, I don't know, but they weren't as prevalent, me seeing them as the water was dropping out. So I think they're already starting to move out. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, but see, now we have brown shrimp here. We have white shrimp and brown shrimp. The brown shrimp, those are the small ones you see it after the water gets cold. They stay around in the marsh year round.
Okay, okay,
And during the coldest parts of the year, that's what the fish are surviving on.
okay,
So after we get on into January, February, you can still fish shrimp patterns, but you want to drop the size of them.
okay,
Now, idle tails that you're imitating mud minnows and finger mullet and stuff that are still hanging around, you can fish those up to 5, 6 inches. I mean, I've caught trout. I've caught trout on 9 inch paddle tails that were 7 inch trout.
oh, no
They
kidding.
they are voracious feeders whenever they're out of the food.
Yeah,
And if you had water temperatures in the high 40s and in mid or low to mid 50s, and you got a nice sunny day and that water temperature climbs up like 2 or 3 degrees real fast, those fish will jump on anything they get in their mouth.
okay. So when we get these real severe cold fronts that come through, like a couple of weeks ago when it stayed, our lows were in the 30s, and I don't think it got much above 40. It shuts those fish down for a couple of days until they kind of get acclimated to it. Is
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
definitely.
and then they'll start to feed again.
Yeah, a couple of days of that cold water, and they'll start feeding again. Their metabolism, they just get hungry.
Right, right. Even though the water temperature may be 40 degrees, they still need to eat.
Hmm.
Okay.
They might often, but they will definitely jump on something that's big.
Yeah.
Of course, then jump on something that's small as well.
Yeah.
You just got to put it in their face.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Be
So
patient. Don't
Dean
expect it.
Dean just dropped in a question. He said, "Would like to hear a discussion about what species are inshore in winter and how it changes as we move towards spring."
Well, your flounder, of course, your larger flounder are going to leave as soon as the water temperature goes down, and they're going to go offshore to spawn. There's still some little potato chip flounder hanging around in the cold water.
Hmm.
Um, the inshore, I mean, if you're talking about fishing the inlets, you're going to have reds and trout, and then the occasional, very small flounder. If you move up into the bays and the coastal rivers, that's when the stripers come down. That's a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
I mean, they feed a lot like trout, except they like more current. And usually, whenever they're starting to be very prevalent and they're feeding heavily, they're feeding on shad because the shad run the rivers in the wintertime up to the Piedmont to spawn, and that's what they're after. That's when your striper runs really pick up.
Okay.
Um, they like structure. They like current. I mean, a lot of people troll for them. When I was growing up around here, everybody trolled for stripers. We used to have giant stripers around here. Those fish are still there, but nobody fishes for them anymore like they used to.
Okay.
They would patrol the bridges on the intercoastal at the PD in Georgetown. There used to be a lot more pollens in the bay that people used to fish. I mean, they anchor up. Another way, other than trolling, is you can anchor upstream from them and hang your bait downstream. You just let it sit in the current. A nice big 9 inch, 10 inch paddle tail hanging in the current. Stripers will jump all over
We'll
that.
jump all over it. Yeah. So as far as the winter goes, you still have your redfish, um, speckled trout, sheep's head.
Yeah, the sheep's head are here as well. I'm not a really big sheep's head fisherman.
Okay.
Um, I'm pretty well versed on it because I grew up doing it, but it's bait fishing, and it's just not. I mean, I fish bait 2 or 3 times a year.
Right. Right.
That's about it. Now, I love catching sheep's head. I love eating sheep's head. Sheep's head are delicious, but I just don't target them very often because I
Right.
like to cast and move.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the exact same way. I'm a power fisherman to heart, man. I cannot stand to sit and just soak a line. It's just not me. It's not me. Now, if I start catching some stuff around the creek mouth, then yeah, I'm gonna camp out there a little while and catch some
Yeah, well,
fish.
but you're still casting and
Right,
casting.
right, yeah, right, exactly, exactly. So, um, Ty asked me a question. He says, "Hey, do you go to Planet Fitness off of 544?" Yes, I do go to Planet Fitness. I'm there probably 3, 4 days a week. It should probably be a little bit more, but yeah, Ty, that's me. Yep, absolutely, man. Hey, next time you see me, come up and say hi. So, uh, Keith McGee Outdoors. He said, "Rattle traps on bridges in a coastal river can be magic for stripers."
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. That can be magic for a lot of different species in the right situation.
Yeah.
Fish, rattle traps piss fish off. That's all I can say about that. It makes them, it just makes them really angry, and they just want to go kill it. I mean,
Okay.
I've, I've probably had broken off on stripes than any other with other flies.
Do you have a rattle trap of choice,
Um,
or
Not
just
really.
a Bass Pro rattle trap?
Just yeah, I mean a rattle trap or a Cordell spot. I mean they're the same thing essentially. One of them is a little squarer on the edges than the other, but other than that, and they might have a little different pitch in their rattles. But I mean, the fish will just kill them. If I'm fishing, as far as like colors, if I'm fishing like our in our coastal rivers, the very tannic water,
Mm-hmm.
I'll fish an orange or red crawdad color. I like a white body with a red head and then a shad. It's a Tennessee shad.
Right.
That's
Right.
pretty much the only fish.
Okay. All right. So,
And they also work very well underneath a popping cork.
see, okay, there's the tip of the night, guys, right there. I wouldn't even thought of putting one under a popping cork.
And that goes for year round.
Okay. Okay. Hey. All right. Well, that's gonna wrap up the night. That's no, that's awesome. No, that's really awesome. So, okay. So moving into winter, I usually ask this of anybody who comes on, whatever season that we're moving into. So if you're going out tomorrow, what 3 baits are you gonna take with you that you're not gonna leave home without? What 3 baits are you gonna use this winter?
Me,
Yeah.
I'm going to have a 3-inch paddle tail, a 3.5-inch paddle tail, different body of like a girthier one and then a skinny one.
Okay.
So, also the shrimp pattern that I pour, I will take that. I will fish that any day of the year, and I will put it up against a voodoo shrimp any day of the week.
So this this the let me get it in front of the camera. Is that the shrimp pattern you're talking about?
Yes, that is the shrimp pattern.
Okay, yeah. This is see, when did we meet up on the water? It may have been about 2 weeks ago.
About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So he stopped by. We actually paddled up to each other, and he gave me a couple of these. And yeah, so this is probably, what did you think that is? Maybe 3.5, 4 inches, something like that.
5/8.
Yeah. So yeah, so a big shrimp pattern right there. That's what he's talking about. So yeah, Steve pours his own. So guys, if you have,
You can take.
yeah.
You can also take that shrimp.
Oh, I just lost Steve again. Oh no. I don't know what he was gonna say, but um, Dean, you said you mentioned coastal rivers, and I think I heard Steve say he operates out of Georgetown. How does Georgetown compare to Murrells Inlet? Okay, so Georgetown has a couple of. You back with me, Steve?
Yeah, I'm back with you.
Okay, so Dean asked another question. He said, you mentioned coastal rivers, and I think I heard Steve say he operates out of Georgetown. How does Georgetown compare to Murrells Inlet?
Well, Georgetown, the main inlet in Georgetown is the mouth of Winyaw Bay, which is very dangerous to fish in a kayak. There's an intercoastal waterway that runs from Winyaw Bay to, well, you know, but honest to God, anywhere that I put a kayak in and I think there's a good possibility I'm gonna catch a redfish, I'll caught them there. There any boat ramp around, usually within a mile of the boat ramp, your your main area you're gonna fish. There's fish there. You're gonna have a lot of boats pass by you, and they're probably not gonna catch as many fish as you are. North Inlet is an immensely great fishery, but there's very little access to it because there's only the only boat ramps that are directly on it are in Devido Colony and in the Hobcall Barony, and both of those are private. I fortunately have a very good fishing buddy of mine. He's been a fishing buddy of mine for 40 years who does a lot of contract work in Devido and has friends that live over there. And he has direct access to it, and I go fishing over there with him a lot.
Yeah.
The rest of the world, well, I feel for you.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard. I've fished North Inlet, I think twice. One I went with a guide, took me over there, and then the other time I went with a buddy. And yeah, I mean, one, you got to know how to navigate those creeks over there because the oyster beds are just, it's like a landmine field. I mean, you got to
Oh yeah.
know how to negotiate those creeks, and you can get lost back in there too. So,
Oh, you sure as good. You sure as devil can.
yeah, but like Steve said, the fishing is amazing back there. And it's amazing because it doesn't get a lot of pressure. There's not a lot of guys who get access to it.
North Inlet gets a lot of pressure.
Oh, it does get a lot of pressure.
I mean, people will go across that bay on a drop of a hat. I mean, you go to the South Island Ferry and you'll often see 75 boats there or boat trailers there, and they're all in North Inlet.
And they're all in North Inlet. Wow.
Not all, but a very
But
large
yeah,
portion.
yeah, a large majority of them are.
I mean, the locals around here, they know how to get to it in Jones Creek. But once you get into the inlet itself, the sandbars over there, which is where we got stuck last Saturday, they change on a daily basis sometimes, especially with all the beach renourishment that's going on north of there in the last 5 years. 75% of that sand is in North Inlet right now.
Oh, no kidding.
It, you pretty much you go in on a high tide and you try to go out in at least the mid tide if you don't know where you're going. Because I mean, I know I have buddies that have fished it a whole lot more than I have. And the last time, one in particular, I went with, we got stuck 4 times on sandbars in a half a mile.
Yeah.
And we're going right where he normally goes, but it's always an adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I wanna hit on these baits again. So right now, basically, you're throwing paddle tails, and are you throwing any type of like a jerk shad at
Yeah,
all? Yeah. Okay.
I throw a jerk shad. I mentioned the fluke earlier.
Oh yeah, fluke. Yep. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I usually fish a 4 or 5 inch jerk bait.
Right.
From
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I
I'll
apologize. I didn't hear fluke. So.
yeah. I also throw hard jerk baits, mirror lures, X wraps, uh, just the various and sundry of plastic jerk baits. I also throw those, but I usually wait until I find fish in an area before I start throwing those. I'll throw a paddle tail. I throw a paddle tail 90% of the time.
You'll throw that around until you get some fish, and then you may throw a mirror lure over there and try to. Okay.
Yeah, I try to find out, where they're holding as far as depth goes, because I hate losing plastic. I hate losing those lures.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're number one, they're expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the ones I've had for 35 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to lose them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No
I
kidding.
will say if anybody has any particular older model lure that they've had for a long time, that's one of their faves, and they lose it, go on eBay, and you can find stuff on eBay that'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
I
And
bought last week. I bought 9 mirror lures for $8.
mm, yeah.
Fishing. I mean, you can find stuff on eBay to blow your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's a mirror lure now? 10, $12 for one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for the cheaper ones. The Mirrodines, they're $15.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't own a Mirrodine.
Yeah, no, I don't either. Yeah, I'm still, I'm redneck enough where I am so cheap that I wait for buddies like you to paddle up to me to give me some free plastics.
That's quite frugal myself. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So now, would you ever throw a topwater during the winter?
Yes,
Okay.
I threw it last Saturday.
Okay.
Saturday afternoon. Water. I didn't catch anything on it, but it looked perfect for it. But where I threw it, I only ended up catching one trout there,
Okay.
and that was Hill Banks in the middle of Winyoff Bay. I was fishing with my neighbor. But the conditions were perfect. But I caught one trout at Shell Banks, and we fished for like an hour and a half. So I was like, let's go to North Inlet. So we went to North Inlet and caught like a dozen overslot reds, a couple of trout, and then we headed back and got stuck.
Okay. All right. So Russell asked, do you ever put rattles in your shrimp baits?
I have not. But one thing I do is a lot of times I will fish in Texas rig with a bullet weight and leave the hook eye exposed, and I'll let it sink to the bottom, and I'll pop, 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 3 quick pops, and that weight hitting that hook eye, it kind of sounds like a very subtle rattle.
Yeah, that
But
little ticking noise.
I want to out and buy glass weights and pierce the shrimp and put it in there. I've done it, but I depend on the action of the bait and the colors more so than I do the sound.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's more, a reaction. I think they're seeing something snap and move and they're going after it and smell because a fish's nose is, it can pick up smells from, yeah, I don't even know how far, but I think, a lot of times they'll just see something flash and move and they're just attacking it.
The reactions.
Yeah, the reaction strikes. So again, Keith McGee Outdoors, he said, what weight jig head do you start with on the paddle tail? I'm sure it may be based on the current flow, but just wondering where you start.
I'll usually start with a quarter ounce.
Quarter ounce.
Unless it's a slower current and I'm only fishing 4 feet of water, I'll fish an 1/8 ounce.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll go underneath that. I mean, I make jig heads from 1/16 to half ounce, 5/8 ounce, and I'll fish them all. I mean, I make 4 or 5 different kinds of jig heads, and I use each one in a particular situation.
Yeah. So that
I gave you that jig head the other day when I gave you a shrimp. That's a new mold I bought. It's a football head with a swinging hook on it.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah, so what he's talking about, it almost looks like the Eye Strike Texas, the Texas eye. So it's got the articulating head, but it's a football head, the one that Steve made. So
yeah, they hang a whole lot less on the oysters than the Eye Strikes do. I guarantee that.
Yeah, I've noticed. I've got a couple of finesse football heads in 1/8 ounce, and I've noticed that too. That I can pop those easily around some oyster beds, and they don't get hung up near as much as a regular.
Wow.
What's that?
I said if you do hang them up, you can get them out.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, Keith, that was a great question. So, so that eighth of an ounce from 4 feet or less, and then really around that four and deeper, you're using a quarter ounce.
Yeah, and when the current speed is the current speed is a determinant factor in that. But I mean, I'll go to a quarter ounce right off the bat most times,
Okay.
or a quarter ounce bullet weight for the Texas rig.
For the Texas rigs. Okay.
Mm.
Great. Great. All right, guys, get those questions in. We're getting close to the end. And also, if you guys have fly fishing questions, throw those out. Trout fishing, Steve is proficient in all of that kind of stuff. So, if you guys want to know about some fly fishing, matter of fact, let's talk about saltwater fly fishing. What is your gear that you're taking out? What size rod? I know we talked, 6 and 8 weights. So, what do you usually throw?
6, 7, or 8 weight, unless I'm targeting like giant reds, I'll throw an 8 or a 10. I mean a 9 or a 10 weight.
Okay.
But a 6 or 8 is mainly what I use.
Okay. Now, are those sinking lines or floating lines that you're throwing, and just letting kind of the tippet kind of sink down, but keeping your line floating on top?
I primarily throw a floating line, but I do have add-on sink tips like 4 feet,
Hmm.
4 to 6 feet to fish for like trout on those drop-offs. Um, but it's primarily a floating line.
Okay.
Like up in the grass, I throw a floating line. Um, Top water, of course, poppers and whatnot. I'll throw a floating line. But I also throw a floating line, like I was telling you last night or the other night, whenever we were talking. I was fishing on a ledge and I was throwing a strike indicator, just like I was nymphing for freshwater trout.
Hmm.
I would I was throwing a zonker, which is a rabbit strip fly with a lead belly on it, and it sinks and breathes a lot in the water, or a Clouser minnow. I mean, a Clouser minnow is essentially a jig.
Yeah.
It's just a lightweight, and you can fish it in 1,000 different ways. But
So
under strike indicator,
I don't have my flies in here. I got my flies in the other room. But yeah. Okay.
but yeah, but also like I told you, whenever you're fishing saltwater with a strike indicator, as opposed to freshwater trout, whenever you mend fishing for freshwater trout, you don't want to move the indicator because it moves the fly. You want the fly to look like it's naturally going the current. When you're doing it in saltwater inshore, you want to manipulate. You want to make that strike indicator jump, so it makes that fly jump.
Okay.
So it looks. That's pretty much what it boils down to.
Right. Right. Okay. Great. Great.
And whenever you're fishing a strike indicator, always set the hook in a down, in as close to a downstream direction as you can. If you can't set it downstream, set it across the stream, because those fish they're reacting to that fly just like a trout in a mountain stream. They're always facing into the current, so whenever they eat it, they're facing up current. If you pull it up current, you're going to pull it straight out of their mouth. You pull it down current, right in the jaw.
Ah, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm still a novice at it. I know, like we talked about, I started fishing, fly fishing when I was out in Colorado, and I was only out there for about 5 years, and really, I feel like I was still just an infant in my fly fishing out there. And then when I moved out here, I don't know why, but I just kind of gave it up. But I shouldn't. And now I'm getting the itch to go ahead and get, whatever 6, 8 weight, and like you said, just carry it with me when the conditions are right, when the tides are right. Just pull that thing and fish it. So, yeah, I think you've already got me talked into it. And Santa Claus is coming to town, so maybe he'll jam one of those in my stocking and. Yeah.
So, as far as fly fishing out of a kayak, you have to have this kind of attitude about it. Yes, you can't cast nearly as far unless you're a very proficient caster, but you don't have to because you can get so close to fishing a kayak they think you're flotsam. I've literally had redfish running inside of my kayak, cast 5 feet from my kayak and catch them. I've had that happen 100 times.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense.
You don't have to be able to cast 75 feet.
Yeah.
It's nice if you can. And you can also, it's not nearly as difficult to cast sitting in a kayak as most people would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just make sure that line, when you pull that line off your reel, make sure it's right between your legs, nothing for it to snag on. Because it will snag on itself if it gets a chance.
Right. Yep. Great. All right. Well, I tell you what, Steve, I appreciate you jumping on here tonight. Guys, if you have any more questions, be quick about it, throw it in, but we're going to be wrapping it up. Guys, if you want to get together with Steve and go on a guided fishing trip, I've got all of his information in the description. It's his email and phone number. Just look right in the description and give him a call. He knows what he's talking about. He'll put you on fish. Like I said, he is on this chat every week. He's the one that I usually, call out all the time when he puts his comment in. And just a wealth of information. I'm glad you came on. Glad I could pick your brain a little bit. I hope you guys learned something from him. Steve, again, really appreciate it.
Appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll do it again, maybe, every couple of months or every time the season rolls around. We'll get you back on and we'll talk some spring fishing. So, guys, take these tips, go catch some fish. And again, Steve, really appreciate you. Guys, I will see you next Thursday. See, next Thursday, no, that's not Christmas. So, yeah, we'll have one more before Christmas. And so, guys, I really appreciate you, and I will see you next time.
Let's get on the water.